My husband died, and I discovered that he had another family. Now we are fighting over the inheritance. My name's Anna, and I am 40 years old. Just a few days ago, my life was perfect. I had a loving husband named Carlos, a cozy home, and dreams for the future. But everything changed in an instant. I remember the moment so clearly. It feels like a nightmare that I can't wake up from. It was a typical Tuesday evening when Carlos came home from work. He walked in with a smile on his face, tired but happy. He kissed me on the cheek and asked about my day. I was cooking dinner, a simple meal of pasta and salad, and we were laughing together, sharing stories about our day. Everything felt normal. Then, just like that, it all fell apart. Carlos suddenly clutched his chest and collapsed to the floor. I screamed his name, my heart racing as I rushed to him. I could see the panic in his eyes as he struggled to breathe. I called for an ambulance, but deep down I knew it was too late. He was gone. The days that followed were a blur. I felt like I was living in a fog. The funeral was painful. Friends and family came to pay their respects, but I felt so alone. Everyone was trying to comfort me, but nothing anyone said could fill the emptiness inside. I was left with only memories of our life together and the crushing weight of my loss. 2 days after the funeral, I was still in shock. I had barely slept or eaten, and my mind was racing with questions. I was cleaning up the house, trying to keep busy, when there was a knock on the door. I opened it, and my heart sank. Standing there was a woman I had never seen before, looking upset and anxious. "Are you Anna?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," I replied, confused and wary. "Who are you?" "I'm Maria," she said. I was with Carlos. We were together for years." I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. How could this be happening? Carlos had never mentioned her, and I had no idea he had another life. My heart raced as I tried to process her words. "Please, come in," I said, motioning for her to enter. My mind was racing with questions. Who was this woman? What did she mean by "together for years"? As she stepped inside, I noticed how fragile she looked, her hands shaking and her eyes filled with tears. We sat down at the kitchen table, and she began to tell me her story. "Carlos and I met 5 years ago," she explained. "I thought we were building a life together. He told me he was separated from his wife." My heart dropped. I felt betrayed and confused. How could he do this to me? Maria continued. "I didn't know he was still married. I loved him, and I thought he loved me too. When I heard about his death, I was devastated. I could see the pain in her eyes, and for a moment I felt sorry for her. But then the anger surged through me. Carlos had lied to both of us, and now I was left to pick up the pieces of our shattered life. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said quickly. "I just want to know what will happen now. Carlos left behind a lot of things, property, money, and I need to know if I have any rights." Her words felt like a slap in the face. This woman, who I had never known, was now asking me about our life together as if it meant nothing. My heart raced with a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, and fear. I had lost my husband, and now I was losing my home and my security. "I don't know what to say," I replied, fighting back tears. "This is all too much." Maria looked at me with a mix of sadness and desperation. "I understand, but we need to figure this out. I don't want to fight, but I deserve to know what happens next." As I sat there, listening to her, I felt my world crashing down around me. I had thought my life was filled with love, but now it felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to fall. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a battle that would change everything. The loss of my husband was only the first of many heartbreaks to come. My heart feels heavy as I write this. After that shocking encounter with Maria, I was left with more questions than answers. How could Carlos have kept such a huge secret from me? I needed to know the truth, so I began to dig deeper into his life. The days passed, but the weight of the revelation hung over me like a dark cloud. I tried to focus on my work and the tasks at hand, but my mind was constantly racing. Every little thing reminded me of Carlos, and the memories were now tainted with betrayal. I decided to search through Carlos's belongings. I knew it would be painful, but I needed answers. I rummaged through his desk, looking for anything that might give me insight into his secret life. As I opened the drawers, I found papers scattered everywhere. Most of it was junk, old bills and receipts, but then I saw something that made my heart stop. There was an envelope with my name on it. I hesitated for a moment, but then my curiosity got the better of me. Inside were letters addressed to me, but they were dated months ago. I opened one, my hands shaking, and began to read. It was a love letter, filled with sweet words and promises. But as I read on, I realized it was also filled with lies. He wrote about his love for me, but then he mentioned Maria in a way that shattered my heart all over again. He had been with her while pretending everything was fine with us. I felt my anger bubbling to the surface. How could he write such beautiful words to me while betraying me? As I continued searching, I stumbled upon a small box hidden in the back of the closet. Inside were pictures of Carlos with Maria and her daughters, all smiling and happy. I felt sick to my stomach. How could he create a whole other family while I thought everything was perfect? I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw everything against the wall. Instead, I felt paralyzed by disbelief. The next day I received a call from a lawyer representing Maria and her daughters. The lawyer demanded to meet with me to discuss the inheritance. My heart raced as I realized this was not going to go away. They wanted a piece of what Carlos left behind. I felt cornered and alone, fighting against a tide that seemed impossible to hold back. When the meeting day arrived, I arrived at the lawyer's office, my palms sweaty and my heart pounding. I walked into the room, and there sat Maria with her 2 daughters. They looked so much like Carlos, and the sight made my heart ache. I took a deep breath and sat down, trying to hold back the tears. The lawyer introduced herself and began to speak. "Thank you for coming, Anna. We are here to discuss the estate of Carlos." Her voice was calm, but I could sense the tension in the air. Maria's daughters were staring at me with a mix of curiosity and resentment. I couldn't help but feel like an intruder in my own life. They were there to claim what they believed was theirs, and I was the unwelcome guest. "We want to settle this amicably," the lawyer continued. "Carlos had significant assets, and we believe Maria and her daughters are entitled to a share." I felt the anger rise within me. Why should they get anything? I was his wife. I protested, my voice trembling. He promised me everything. The lawyer tried to calm me down. "Anna, I understand this is difficult, but legally they have rights too. We must follow the law." I looked at Maria, her eyes filled with sadness and anger. "You took my husband from me. You have no right to anything he left behind." The tension in the room escalated. Maria's daughters exchanged looks of disbelief, and I could see the hurt in their eyes. They didn't deserve this, but neither did I. The meeting ended without a resolution, and as I left the office, I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. The fight had just begun, and I was not ready for the battle ahead. I had lost my husband, but now I was facing a fight that would tear apart everything I believed in. As the days turned into weeks, the reality of my situation sank in. I was alone, battling against a family that I never knew existed. I was determined to protect what was mine, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. My world was shattered, and I had no idea how to pick up the pieces. After the shocking meeting with Maria and her daughters, I knew I had to prepare myself for the legal battles that lay ahead. The grief of losing Carlos was one thing, but now I had to fight for what was rightfully mine. I spent hours researching the laws regarding inheritance. I wanted to understand my rights and what I needed to do to protect myself. The more I learned, the more determined I became. I had been Carlos's wife for over 10 years, and I had every right to what he left behind. As I gathered information, Maria's lawyer sent me several documents requesting details about our marital assets. They wanted everything: our house, bank accounts, and even the small savings I had tucked away for emergencies. I felt my anger rising again. How could they demand this from me? I was still grieving. I decided to consult with my own lawyer, someone who could help me navigate this difficult time. I found a local attorney, a kind woman named Rachel, who understood my situation. She listened to my story and assured me that we could fight back. "You have every right to protect what you've built with Carlos," she said firmly. "We will make sure your voice is heard." Feeling a bit more empowered, I began to gather all the necessary documents and evidence. I kept thinking about how Carlos had lied to me and to Maria. He had created a web of deceit, and now it was up to me to unravel it. I felt like I was diving into a deep ocean of pain and betrayal, but I was determined to swim back to the surface. The days turned into weeks, and the stress began to take its toll. I struggled to sleep and eat, constantly worrying about what was to come. Maria began sending me messages, pleading for a fair settlement. "We can work this out, Anna. I just want what is fair for my daughters," she wrote. But I found it hard to trust her. She had already taken so much from me. In the midst of all this turmoil, I had to keep my job and maintain a sense of normalcy. I forced myself to go to work, but my mind was often elsewhere. My coworkers noticed something was off, but I put on a brave face, hiding my pain behind a smile. Inside, I was breaking. One day, as I was sitting in my office, I received a call from Rachel. "Anna, I have some news," she said. My heart raced. "We've been able to gather enough evidence to challenge Maria's claims. Carlos didn't update his will, and that gives us leverage." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Maybe there was hope after all. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice shaking. "It means we can argue that everything belongs to you. We can prove that you were his legal wife and that he intended for you to have his estate," Rachel explained. I took a deep breath, feeling a flicker of hope. "What do we do next?" Rachel laid out our plan. We needed to prepare for court. I felt a mix of fear and determination. The thought of standing in front of a judge was daunting, but I had to do it. I owed it to myself and to Carlos's memory. As the court date approached, I found myself battling anxiety. I often thought of Carlos, remembering our happy moments together, and I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. How could he do this to me? I wished he were here to explain himself, but he was gone, leaving me to fight this battle alone. On the day of the court hearing, I arrived at the courthouse, my heart pounding in my chest. The atmosphere was tense as I stepped into the courtroom. I saw Maria sitting with her lawyer, and she looked just as nervous as I felt. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I saw a mix of anger and sorrow reflected back at me. The judge entered the room, and everything became quiet. I could feel my hands shaking as I clutched the documents tightly. Rachel stood beside me, offering silent support. The proceedings began, and I listened carefully as both sides presented their arguments. Maria's lawyer spoke passionately about her client's rights, but I could sense the doubt in his voice. As Rachel spoke on my behalf, I felt a surge of confidence. She detailed our life together, the love we shared, and how Carlos had intended for me to have everything he left behind. Then it was my turn to speak. I stood up, my voice trembling but strong. "Carlos was my husband, and I loved him deeply. I don't want to fight Maria or her daughters, but I need to protect what is rightfully mine. Carlos may have had a secret life, but I am still his wife." Tears welled in my eyes as I finished speaking. I could feel the weight of my words hanging in the air, and I knew that this was my moment to stand up for myself. The judge listened carefully, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. After hearing both sides, he asked for a recess to consider the evidence. My heart raced as I sat down beside Rachel. We had made our case, but would it be enough? I had no idea what the outcome would be, but I knew one thing: I was ready to fight for my future. I was still reeling from the court hearing when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and my heart sank. There stood Maria's 2 daughters, looking angry and determined. They looked like they had come to fight, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "Are you Anna?" one of them, the older girl, demanded. "Yes," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk. This is about our father's estate," she said, crossing her arms defiantly. I could feel the tension in the air. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to understand their intentions. "We want what is rightfully ours. We know about you and Carlos, but he had another family too. You can't just take everything for yourself," she said, her voice rising. The younger sister stood behind her, looking frightened but resolute. I could see the resemblance to their father, and it made my heart ache. "Listen, I'm not trying to take anything away from you," I said, trying to remain calm. "But Carlos was my husband. I have rights too?" They both looked at me with anger in their eyes. "Rights? You mean the rights of a wife who didn't even know he had a whole other family?" the older girl shouted. "You think you can just ignore us and claim everything?" Their words felt like daggers. "I loved Carlos. He was my husband, and I deserved to know what he wanted for us," I replied, my voice trembling with emotion. Suddenly, the older daughter pushed past me and barged into my house. "We need to see what he left behind," she insisted. I felt a rush of adrenaline. "You can't just come into my home like this," I shouted, trying to block her path. The younger sister tried to follow, and I instinctively reached out to stop her. "Get out. You can't do this," I yelled. Feeling the anger rise in me, the confrontation escalated quickly. They pushed back against me, and I felt helpless. I didn't want to fight them, but I also couldn't let them take control of my life. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to fall into an abyss. The older daughter shoved me aside, and I stumbled back, almost losing my balance. "We deserve answers," she shouted. At that moment, something snapped inside me. I couldn't let them push me around. I rushed forward and grabbed the older daughter's arm, my heart racing. "You need to leave. This is my home," I screamed, tears streaming down my face. The younger sister looked terrified, and I felt a pang of guilt for involving her in this. But I was too overwhelmed to care. I pushed them toward the door, my voice rising. "Get out. I don't want to see you here again." As they stumbled back, the older daughter turned to me, her face red with rage. "You'll regret this. We will fight for what's ours." With that, they stormed out, slamming the door behind them. I sank to the floor, my heart pounding in my chest. The adrenaline slowly faded, leaving me feeling empty and defeated. The confrontation had left me shaken. I knew this was just the beginning of a long battle, and I felt exhausted. I picked myself up and sat on the couch, tears streaming down my face. How could I fight against a family that had already taken so much from me? As I sat there, I realized I needed to find a way to regain control. I couldn't let fear dictate my life. I would have to prepare for whatever was coming next. The confrontation with Maria's daughters left me feeling isolated. I knew I needed support, so I reached out to my friends and family, hoping they would stand by me during this difficult time. I called my best friend, Lisa, and asked her to come over. When she arrived, I poured out my heart to her, sharing everything that had happened. "I can't believe this is happening, Lisa. I feel like my entire world has crumbled," I said, wiping away my tears. "I'm here for you, Anna. You're not alone in this," she reassured me. "Have you thought about what you want to do next?" "I don't know. I want to protect what's mine, but it feels like everyone is against me," I replied, my voice trembling. Lisa frowned, her brow furrowing. "You need to be careful. Sometimes, people can surprise you. Not everyone will have your back." Her words lingered in my mind, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I needed allies, but I had to choose wisely. The next day, I decided to reach out to my brother, Marco. He had always been my rock, and I could count on him. When I told him everything that had happened, he was furious. "Those girls have no right to come into your home like that. I'll help you fight this," he said, clenching his fists. "Thank you, Marco." "I just feel so overwhelmed," I admitted. "Don't worry, we'll figure this out together," he promised, and I felt a spark of hope. As I started to build my support system, I couldn't shake the feeling that there were hidden agendas at play. I confided in my neighbor, Sophia, who I thought I could trust. But as I shared my story, I noticed her expression change. She looked uneasy. "Anna, I've heard some things," she began, hesitating. My heart raced as I wondered what she meant. "What do you mean?" I pressed her, anxiety flooding my chest. "I've seen Maria around town, and I've heard her talking to some people who know Carlos. I just want you to be careful. There are whispers about your situation," Sophia warned. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The betrayal hurt more than I could express. "You mean to tell me that people are talking about me? About Carlos?" I felt the tears welling up in my eyes. "I'm sorry, Anna. I didn't want to worry you, but I thought you should know," she said softly. After Sophia left, I sat in silence, feeling more alone than ever. I thought I could trust everyone, but now I felt like I was walking on a tightrope, and the ground beneath me was crumbling. I tried to focus on the support I had, Marco and Lisa, but the whispers and rumors gnawed at my mind. It was hard to shake off the feeling of betrayal, especially when I saw how quickly people turned against each other. One evening, I received a call from Rachel, my lawyer. "Anna, I have some information that could help your case. I need you to come in," she said urgently. I rushed to her office, my heart pounding. When I arrived, she had a stack of documents waiting for me. These are records of Carlos's financial accounts. We can use this information to build a stronger case against Maria's claims, she explained. As I sifted through the papers, my heart raced. I found transactions I didn't recognize, along with bank statements showing payments that seemed suspicious. What does this mean? I asked, feeling a mix of hope and fear. It means Carlos was hiding things, and we can use this to argue that he intended for you to have everything. We need to prove that he was still invested in your life, Rachel said. I felt a spark of determination. This was my chance to fight back, to show everyone that I wouldn't back down. I just needed to stay focused and make sure I had the right people in my corner. But the more I dug into Carlos's finances, the more questions I had. Why had he been sending money to Maria? What else was he hiding? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was uncovering secrets that would change everything. Determined to get to the bottom of Carlos's secret life, I spent countless hours poring over the documents Rachel had provided. Each page revealed new truths, and I felt my anger boiling beneath the surface. How could he have betrayed me like this? One evening, I found a particularly troubling transaction, a large sum of money sent to a mysterious account. I couldn't help but wonder if it was connected to Maria. My heart raced as I contemplated the implications. I needed to find out more about this account and what Carlos had been hiding. I decided to confront Rachel about the findings. There's a large transfer here, I said, pointing at the document. I need to know who this is going to. Rachel took a closer look and nodded. We might need to do some digging, but I have some resources to help with that. Let me see what I can find out, she said, her tone serious. I left her office feeling a mix of hope and anxiety. If I could uncover the truth behind Carlos's finances, I could strengthen my case against Maria and her daughters. I was ready to fight back, and I wouldn't let fear stop me. Over the next few days, I spent every spare moment researching. I reached out to former colleagues of Carlos's, hoping to gain insight into his life. Some were supportive, while others were evasive. It became clear that Carlos had built a facade that few could see through. One night, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a photo that made my heart race. It was a picture of Carlos with Maria, taken at a restaurant I recognized. They looked happy, and it felt like a knife to my heart. I knew I had to confront this head-on. I called Marco and Lisa over to my house. I found something. I need your help to confront Maria, I said, showing them the picture. Marco's eyes narrowed. We need to catch her off guard. She won't expect you to come at her with evidence. I nodded, feeling a sense of purpose. I need to show her that I won't be intimidated. If she wants to fight, then we'll fight. The next day, I gathered my courage and went to the cafe where the picture had been taken. I wanted to confront Maria and her daughters face to face. I felt my heart racing as I walked in, scanning the room for familiar faces. I spotted Maria sitting at a table with her daughters, and I marched over, determination fueling my steps. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady but firm. Maria looked up, surprised. What are you doing here? She asked, a hint of fear in her eyes. I know about your relationship with Carlos. I have proof, I replied, holding up my phone with the photo displayed prominently. The room fell silent, and I could see the realization dawning on her face. You don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, but I could tell she was rattled. I do know, and I'm not going to let you take what's rightfully mine. You may think you can intimidate me, but I won't back down, I said, my voice rising. The younger daughter looked scared, and I felt a pang of guilt for dragging her into this. But I needed to stand my ground. This is about what Carlos left behind. I deserve to know the truth, I said. Maria glared at me, her anger boiling over. You think you can just waltz in here and demand respect? You're nothing but a wife who was left in the dark. Her words stung, but I refused to let them break me. You're right, I was left in the dark. But I won't be kept there any longer. I will uncover everything Carlos was hiding, and I will fight for what's mine, I declared. The confrontation escalated, and I felt my heart pounding in my chest. I was ready to face whatever came next. I was determined to take back control of my life, and I would stop at nothing to uncover the truth. As I left the cafe, I felt a surge of confidence. I was no longer a victim. I was a fighter, and I would do whatever it took to protect what was rightfully mine. The day of the court decision had finally arrived. I stood in the courthouse, my heart racing. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. The air was thick with tension as everyone awaited the judge's verdict. I had spent so many sleepless nights, worrying about this day, and now it was here. Maria and her daughters sat across the room, their faces a mix of anger and anxiety. I glanced over at Marco and Lisa, who stood beside me for support. "Whatever happens, we'll get through this together," Marco whispered, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. I took a deep breath and tried to calm my racing heart. I had fought hard for this moment, uncovering secrets and truths about Carlos's hidden life. I felt a mixture of hope and dread. What would the judge decide? Would I lose everything? As the judge entered the room, I felt my stomach twist in knots. He took his seat and looked down at the documents spread before him. I held my breath, listening to the silence that filled the room. After reviewing the evidence and the testimonies provided, I have come to a decision regarding the estate of Carlos, the judge began, his voice steady. It is clear that both parties have valid claims. However, under the laws of marriage and the evidence presented, the primary beneficiary of Carlos's estate will be Anna. My heart soared with relief, but I knew this wasn't over. The judge continued, "However, given the circumstances surrounding the case, I am ordering that the estate be divided. Anna will receive the family home and half of the financial assets, while Maria and her daughters will receive the other half." I felt a mix of emotions wash over me. I had won, but at a cost. Maria and her daughters looked furious as the judge made his ruling. I could see the anger and disbelief in their eyes. I didn't want to take anything from them, but I had fought for my rights as Carlos's wife. The judge wrapped up the proceedings, and I felt like I was in a daze. As I walked out of the courtroom, Marco and Lisa rushed to my side, their faces filled with pride and concern. "You did it, Anna. You stood up for yourself," Marco said, giving me a warm hug. "I can't believe it's finally over," I replied, my voice trembling with relief and exhaustion. But as I stepped outside, the weight of my victory began to settle in. I had lost so much during this battle. Carlos's betrayal had cut deep, and I could feel the scars left behind. I looked back at the courthouse, feeling a mix of triumph and sorrow. Over the next few weeks, the reality of the divided estate began to sink in. I moved into the family home, a place filled with memories of love and laughter, but also of pain and betrayal. I spent hours going through old photos and belongings, trying to separate the happy memories from the hurt. With the financial settlement, I knew I had to start fresh. I decided to take a portion of the money to invest in a new business. I had always dreamed of opening a small bakery, a place filled with warmth and joy. This was my chance to rebuild my life, to create something new from the ashes of my past. As I began the process of starting my bakery, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I threw myself into planning and designing, filling my days with flour and sugar instead of sorrow. I envisioned a bright future filled with the smell of fresh bread and the sound of laughter. Maria and her daughters continued to contact me, their messages filled with anger and blame. I felt sorry for them, but I also knew I couldn't let their bitterness drag me down. I had to focus on my own healing and growth. I often thought of Carlos, wondering how he could have led two lives. Did he ever truly love me? I wished he could have been honest, but that was a question I would never have the answer to. I had to let go of the past and move forward, no matter how painful it was. As my bakery began to take shape, I found joy in the little things: baking cupcakes, decorating cookies, and sharing my creations with friends and family. Slowly but surely, I started to feel like myself again. The day of the grand opening arrived, and I was filled with a mix of excitement and nerves. I decorated the shop with flowers and balloons, inviting everyone in the neighborhood to come and celebrate. I felt like I was starting a new chapter, leaving the pain of my past behind. As I stood behind the counter, surrounded by friends and familiar faces, I realized that I had finally found a sense of peace. The road ahead would still have challenges, but I was ready to face them head-on. I had emerged from the darkness stronger than ever. In that moment, I understood that life goes on, even after loss and betrayal. I had built something beautiful from the ashes of my past, and that was a legacy worth celebrating. With a heart full of hope and a newfound purpose, I looked forward to the future. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I was not just a survivor, but a fighter. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. See you next time.